February 18th, 2024. A remote stretch of desert in Sonora, Mexico. The morning sun beats down on what appears to be empty scrubland, but hidden beneath the brush and scattered trees lies something extraordinary. Mexican federal forces are closing in on coordinates that will change everything they thought they knew about drug production. At 9:47 a.m., helicopters circle overhead as ground units move through the terrain. What they discover defies imagination. 72 massive metal boilers arranged in perfect formation, chemical reactors gleaming in the desert heat. This isn't just a drug lab, this is an industrial empire. When the dust settles and the final tally comes in, authorities will seize over 40 tons of pure methamphetamine. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to half of what Mexico had seized in the entire previous year. All from a single location most people would never suspect existed. But this discovery raises more questions than it answers. How did cartels build something this massive without detection? What does this level of sophistication mean for the drug war? And perhaps most importantly, if this is what they found, what else is still out there? This is the story of Mexico's most dangerous drug lab. A journey into the heart of an operation so advanced, so well organized, and so profitable that it's rewriting the rules of international drug trafficking. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand why experts are calling this the most significant discovery in the history of synthetic drug production. The scale of what we're dealing with isn't just impressive, it's terrifying. Since February 2025, Mexican authorities have dismantled 69 clandestine drug laboratories. They've seized nearly 5 tons of methamphetamine, over 450 kilos of cocaine, and 55 kilos of fentanyl. These numbers represent just the tip of an iceberg that stretches far deeper than anyone imagined. But the Sonora facility changed everything. This wasn't some makeshift operation hidden in a basement or tucked away in a mountain cave. This was industrial-scale production that rivaled legitimate manufacturing plants. The sheer number of boilers tells the story. Most major labs authorities had previously discovered contained maybe 13 boilers. This facility had 72 points. The implications hit investigators immediately. If one location could produce this much, what was the true scope of cartel manufacturing capabilities? Felipe de Jesus Gallo, head of Mexico's Criminal Investigation Agency, put it bluntly. Mexico has become the champion of methamphetamine production, and now fentanyl. Since the 1990s, cartels have transformed from regional smuggling operations into global pharmaceutical companies. The geography of production has evolved dramatically. Traditional strongholds like Sinaloa still matter, but production has spread across the country. Labs now operate in Hidalgo, Puebla, Jalisco, and increasingly in Sonora. What used to be primarily a smuggling corridor has become a center of manufacturing. The cartels didn't just expand their territory, they industrialized their entire operation. This expansion reflects a fundamental shift in how these organizations operate. They're no longer dependent on natural products that require vast growing areas and favorable climate conditions. Synthetic drugs can be produced anywhere with the right equipment and chemicals. A single facility can supply markets across continents. The economic impact is staggering. When authorities calculate the street value of seized methamphetamine, they're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars from individual raids. But that's just the beginning. These labs don't produce for local markets. They're feeding a global appetite that generates billions in revenue. Understanding the supply chain reveals the true sophistication of modern cartel operations. The chemicals don't originate in Mexico. They arrive through an intricate international network that spans continents and involves some of the world's most regulated substances. Container ships departing from Chinese ports carry the building blocks of destruction. These aren't the finished drugs. They're precursor chemicals and pre-precursors that cartels have learned to manipulate and combine. Major Mexican ports like Lázaro Cárdenas and Manzanillo have become gateways for this deadly commerce. The genius of the operation lies in its legal flexibility. When authorities crack down on specific chemicals, manufacturers simply modify their formulas. They create new analogues that technically aren't regulated yet. It's a constant game of chemical cat and mouse, and the cartels are winning. Chinese and Indian chemical companies manufacture and sell these precursors completely legally in their home countries. The responsibility for what happens next falls into a grey area of international law. By the time these chemicals reach Mexico, they've often changed hands multiple times through a network of brokers and intermediaries. These brokers represent the invisible layer of the drug trade. They're not cartel members in the traditional sense. They're business people who understand international commerce, shipping regulations, and chemical manufacturing. They know which companies will ask questions and which ones won't. They understand how to structure transactions to avoid detection. The cartels have learned to diversify their supplier base. If one route gets compromised, they have alternatives. If one chemical becomes too heavily regulated, they switch to something else. This flexibility makes traditional law enforcement approaches increasingly ineffective. Recent seizures point to constant innovation. In November 2024, authorities intercepted 27.4 kilograms of a substance called 2-bromethylbenzene arriving from Hong Kong. It was the first time this particular chemical had been seized in Mexico. Experts believe it represents a new pathway for synthetic drug production. The speed of adaptation is remarkable. Within months of new regulations taking effect, cartels have identified workarounds. They employ chemists who understand molecular structures well enough to create variations that produce the same effects while technically being different substances. This chemical arms race has transformed the nature of drug trafficking. Traditional interdiction methods focused on known substances moving through predictable routes. Now authorities face constantly changing formulas moving through legitimate commercial channels. The organizational structure behind these operations resembles multinational corporations more than traditional criminal gangs. At the top, commanding leaders plan and control both money and narcotics. They make strategic decisions about production levels, market expansion, and territorial disputes. Below them, regional managers function as plaza bosses. They maintain order within specific territories, enforce organizational rules, and coordinate local operations. These aren't street-level dealers. They're executives managing complex logistical networks. The operational hierarchy includes specialized roles that mirror legitimate businesses. Transport operatives handle movement logistics, developing sophisticated smuggling routes and maintaining fleets of vehicles. Intelligence scouts provide real-time information about law enforcement activities. Financial specialists manage money laundering operations that rival major banks in complexity. Armed enforcers represent the most visible aspect of cartel operations, but they're actually a small part of the overall structure. The majority of cartel employees never touch drugs or weapons. They work in logistics, accounting, communications, and administration. This corporate structure enables remarkable efficiency. Production facilities can be relocated quickly when threatened. Supply chains can be rerouted around law enforcement operations. Market disruptions in one region can be compensated by increased activity elsewhere. The recruitment process reflects this professionalization. Cartels actively seek individuals with specific skills. They hire chemists from legitimate pharmaceutical companies. They recruit logistics experts from shipping companies. They target corrupt officials who can provide protection and intelligence. Training programs ensure consistency across operations. New recruits learn standardized procedures for everything from chemical handling to security protocols. This systematic approach reduces errors and increases productivity. Quality control measures rival those of legitimate manufacturers. Product purity is tested at multiple stages. Consistency is maintained across different production facilities. Customer feedback is collected and analyzed to improve products. The financial sophistication extends to research and development. Cartels invest in developing new products and improving existing ones. They study market trends and consumer preferences. They adapt their offerings based on regulatory changes and law enforcement tactics. This level of organization explains how facilities like the Sonora Lab can operate undetected. They're not improvised operations run by desperate criminals. They're professionally managed enterprises with the resources and expertise to rival legitimate businesses. The implications for law enforcement are profound. Traditional approaches designed to combat disorganized criminal gangs are inadequate against these sophisticated enterprises. The challenge isn't just catching criminals. It's dismantling complex organizations with deep resources and professional management. The technology protecting these operations would impress Silicon Valley executives. In 2018, a hacker working directly for the Sinaloa cartel demonstrated capabilities that shocked intelligence agencies worldwide. This individual managed to penetrate FBI communications, obtaining phone records from federal agents operating in Mexico. But that was just the beginning. Using Mexico City's own surveillance camera network, the hacker tracked FBI personnel through the streets. Every meeting, every contact, every safe house location was compromised. The cartel used the government's own security infrastructure against it. When informants started disappearing, investigators realized they weren't just fighting drug dealers anymore. They were battling a technologically sophisticated adversary. Encrypted communications have become standard across cartel networks. They employ the same security protocols used by major corporations and government agencies. Voice calls are routed through multiple servers across different countries. Messages are automatically deleted after predetermined time periods. Digital forensics experts struggle to penetrate these systems even with advanced tools. The cartels have adapted faster than law enforcement. While agencies debate budgets and jurisdictions, criminal organizations invest heavily in cutting-edge technology. They hire cybersecurity experts who previously worked for legitimate companies. They purchase commercial-grade surveillance equipment that rivals what intelligence agencies use. Drone technology has revolutionized both sides of this conflict. The CIA now flies MQ-9 Reaper drones over Mexican territory, searching for hidden laboratories. These unarmed aircraft provide real-time intelligence to Mexican authorities. But the cartels have drones too. They use them for surveillance, communications relay, and even small-scale transport of high-value products. The technological arms race extends to detection avoidance. Laboratory operators employ sophisticated methods to mask their chemical signatures. They understand how satellite imagery works and design facilities to avoid detection from above. Thermal signatures are disguised using legitimate industrial covers. Chemical waste is processed to eliminate telltale traces. Counter-surveillance measures are built into every aspect of operations. Multiple escape routes are planned and regularly tested. Early warning systems alert operators to approaching threats hours in advance. Backup facilities can be activated within days if primary locations are compromised. The human intelligence network supporting these operations rivals those of nation-states. Informants are placed throughout law enforcement agencies at municipal, state, and federal levels. Corruption isn't just opportunistic anymore. It's systematic and strategic. Recent cases reveal the depth of this penetration. General Salvador Cienfuegos Cepeda, Mexico's former defense minister, was accused of using his position to aid cartel operations. Genaro Garcia Luna, former Secretary of Public Security, received a 38-year prison sentence for accepting bribes from the Sinaloa cartel. When defense ministers and security chiefs are compromised, the entire system becomes unreliable. The corruption network extends beyond individual officials. Entire agencies have been infiltrated. A former high-level DEA official revealed that Mexican law enforcement spends more time surveilling American agents than tracking cartel members. The implications are staggering. Intelligence shared with Mexican authorities often reaches cartel leadership before it reaches operational units. This systematic corruption explains how massive facilities like the Sonora Lab can operate undetected for extended periods. It's not just about avoiding patrol routes or hiding from satellites. It's about having advance warning of every law enforcement operation. When raids are planned weeks in advance, targets have ample time to relocate or eliminate evidence. The financial resources enabling this corruption are virtually unlimited. Cartel revenues dwarf the budgets of the agencies trying to stop them. A single successful shipment can generate more profit than an entire police department's annual budget. This economic reality creates enormous pressure on officials at every level. Border security represents the final battlefield in this technological war. The United States has invested millions in advanced scanning equipment designed to detect drugs hidden in vehicles. But much of this technology sits unused in warehouses because Congress hasn't appropriated funds for installation. The equipment that is operational reveals the creativity of smuggling operations. Officers have discovered fentanyl pills inside Coca-Cola bottles, painted black and arranged in legitimate crates. Drugs have been found hidden in the water tanks of commercial bus bathrooms. Even vehicles carrying children in car seats have been used as cover for smuggling operations. New scanning technology promises to change this dynamic. Non-intrusive inspection systems can X-ray vehicles without requiring drivers to exit. These massive scanners look like car washes, but can detect hidden compartments and suspicious substances. The goal is to scan 40% of personal vehicles and 70% of commercial traffic by 2006. Currently, authorities scan less than 2% of personal vehicles and about 15% of commercial traffic. This low detection rate makes smuggling a calculated risk with favorable odds. Increasing scan rates dramatically changes the mathematical equation that smugglers rely on. Canine detection units have been trained specifically for fentanyl since 2017. These dogs represent one of the most effective tools available to border agents. Unlike technological solutions, trained dogs can detect trace amounts of substances even when sophisticated concealment methods are used. The challenge lies in scale. The border processes millions of vehicles annually. Even with improved technology and additional canine units, physical inspection remains a numbers game. Cartels understand these limitations and plan accordingly. Processing times represent another vulnerability. If scanning every vehicle caused significant delays, the economic impact on legitimate trade would be enormous. Border security must balance thoroughness with efficiency. Cartels exploit this tension by using legitimate commercial traffic as cover. The technological sophistication extends to communication systems. Cartels maintain their own radio networks with encrypted channels and frequency hopping capabilities. They monitor law enforcement communications in real time. When police departments change radio frequencies or encryption protocols, cartel technicians adapt within hours. These communication networks span international borders. Coordination between production facilities in Mexico and distribution networks in the United States happens in real-time market conditions, law enforcement activities, and logistical challenges are communicated instantly across the entire organization. The financial technology supporting these operations rivals that of major banks. Money laundering has evolved from simple cash transactions to sophisticated digital operations. Cryptocurrencies provide additional layers of anonymity. Shell companies and complex ownership structures make tracing funds nearly impossible. Real estate investments have become a preferred method for legitimizing profits. Cartels purchase properties through networks of intermediaries. These investments provide both money laundering opportunities and operational bases. Luxury developments in major cities often have hidden connections to drug trafficking organizations. The scope of technological adaptation continues expanding. As law enforcement develops new detection methods, cartels invest in countermeasures. This cycle of innovation and counter-innovation has accelerated dramatically over the past decade. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are beginning to play roles on both sides. Law enforcement agencies use these tools to analyze patterns in trafficking data. Cartels employ similar technologies to optimize routes and predict enforcement activities. The technological arms race shows no signs of slowing. Each advancement by one side prompts corresponding developments by the other. The stakes continue rising as both the sophistication and the consequences of these operations increase. What emerges from this analysis is a picture of adversaries that have evolved far beyond traditional criminal organizations. They operate with the resources, technology, and organizational sophistication of major corporations or government agencies. The implications for law enforcement and public safety are profound and continuing to evolve. The chemical processes happening inside these facilities would shock pharmaceutical executives. Cartel chemists have mastered reactions that legitimate companies spend years perfecting. They've industrialized production methods that maximize yield while minimizing waste. The efficiency rivals that of major drug manufacturers. Mexican crime syndicates like the Sinaloa and Jalisco Nueva Generación cartels have created production lines that operate with clockwork precision. Once precursor chemicals reach Mexican soil, they're transformed through systematic processes that have been refined over decades. Quality control measures ensure consistency across different batches and facilities. The chemistry itself has become increasingly sophisticated. Producers modify molecular structures to create new analogues that aren't yet regulated. When authorities ban one compound, chemists simply adjust a few atoms and create something technically different but functionally identical. This chemical flexibility keeps them ahead of regulatory efforts. Fentanyl production requires remarkably small quantities of raw materials. Just 2 milligrams can be lethal according to the Drug Enforcement Administration. This potency means that shipping containers holding tons of precursors can produce enough finished product to supply entire regions. The mathematics of the trade have fundamentally changed. The diversification extends beyond traditional drugs. Sources in Culiacán reveal that producers have begun manufacturing 2C, a synthetic mixture that draws its name from the chemical compound 2CB. This expansion into new markets demonstrates their ability to adapt to changing consumer demands and identify emerging opportunities. Pricing dynamics reveal the concentration of production capabilities. Wholesale fentanyl prices in Sinaloa rose from $3,000 to $6,000 per kilogram in August 2024. This increase suggests that production has consolidated among fewer operators, giving them greater control over supply and pricing. The mixing of different substances creates additional complications. Xylazine, a veterinary sedative, is being combined with fentanyl at various stages of the supply chain. Chinese companies openly sell xylazine for as little as $7 per 5 milliliters with worldwide shipping. The combination creates products that are even more dangerous and harder to treat. Quality testing happens at multiple stages of production. Samples are analyzed for purity and potency. Consistency across batches is maintained through standardized procedures. Customer feedback is collected and incorporated into future production runs. This attention to quality rivals that of legitimate pharmaceutical companies. The waste management systems demonstrate environmental awareness driven by operational security rather than ecological concern. Chemical byproducts are processed to eliminate traces that might reveal locations through environmental testing. Sophisticated filtration systems prevent contamination that could attract attention from health authorities. Production scheduling reflects market analysis and seasonal demand patterns. Facilities ramp up production before major holidays when consumption typically increases. Supply chains are managed to ensure consistent availability while minimizing inventory that could be seized during raids. The training programs for laboratory workers are comprehensive and systematic. New recruits learn safety protocols, quality standards, and security procedures. Experienced chemists teach specialized techniques that maximize efficiency. This knowledge transfer ensures operations continue even when key personnel are arrested. Research and development efforts focus on improving existing products and developing new ones. cartels invest in understanding consumer preferences and market trends. They test new formulations and gather feedback from distribution networks. This market-driven approach guides production decisions. The coordination between production and distribution happens in real time. Laboratory managers receive orders from distribution networks and adjust production accordingly. Inventory levels are monitored continuously. Shipping schedules are coordinated to minimize storage time and reduce seizure risks. Law enforcement faces unprecedented challenges when confronting these sophisticated operations. Traditional investigative techniques designed for smaller criminal organizations prove inadequate against industrial-scale enterprises. The resources and expertise required for effective enforcement have expanded dramatically. Even successful raids often fail to achieve lasting impact. When laboratories are discovered and dismantled, replacement facilities can be operational within weeks. The financial losses from seized drugs and equipment represent minor setbacks for organizations generating billions in revenue. The prosecution of captured operators faces similar limitations. Mexican authorities report that network dismantling rarely follows laboratory seizures. Meaningful prosecutions are uncommon. The legal system struggles to address the complexity and scale of modern trafficking organizations. Corruption investigations reveal systematic penetration of law enforcement agencies. The 2024 Mexican election was the most violent in 6 years, with more than 30 candidates killed. This violence reflects the stakes involved when political control determines operational security for trafficking organizations. Intelligence sharing between countries has become increasingly complicated. Mexico's 2021 national security law regarding foreign agents has restricted cooperation with American agencies. A former DEA official revealed that Mexican law enforcement agencies dedicate more resources to surveilling American agents than tracking cartel activities. The Pax Mafioso system creates additional complications for enforcement efforts. Politicians receive votes and support in exchange for not interfering with specific cartels. This arrangement creates protected zones where operations can continue without interference. Electoral politics and drug trafficking have become intertwined. Border enforcement represents the final opportunity to intercept products before they reach consumers. Despite massive investments in detection technology, success rates remain low. More than 95% of seized fentanyl is discovered in personal vehicles, but scanning rates for such vehicles remain under 2%. The installation of advanced scanning equipment has been delayed by funding disputes. Equipment worth millions sits unused in warehouses, while Congress debates appropriations. Meanwhile, smuggling operations adapt to existing detection capabilities and develop new concealment methods. Canine detection units provide one of the most effective tools available to border agents. Dogs trained specifically for fentanyl detection since 2017 can identify trace amounts even when sophisticated hiding methods are used. However, the volume of traffic makes comprehensive screening impossible. Processing delays create additional vulnerabilities. If thorough inspections cause significant delays, the economic impact on legitimate trade would be enormous. Smugglers exploit this tension by using commercial traffic as cover. Border security must balance effectiveness with efficiency. The international cooperation required for effective enforcement faces political and practical obstacles. Presidential designations of cartels as terrorist organizations create legal frameworks for enhanced enforcement, but also complicate diplomatic relationships. Trade policies and security concerns often conflict. President Trump's threatened 25% tariffs on Mexican goods reflect frustration with enforcement efforts. These economic pressures aim to motivate greater cooperation, but also risk damaging relationships needed for effective collaboration. The balance between pressure and partnership remains delicate. The Merida Initiative, launched in 2008, established frameworks for bilateral cooperation. Over 13 years of implementation, it provided support to Mexican security institutions and facilitated joint operations. However, results have been mixed, and cartel capabilities have continued expanding. Recent cooperation efforts have achieved notable successes. The Southern Border Telecommunications Program has assisted in capturing cartel members and seizing significant drug quantities. Intelligence sharing has led to successful operations against major trafficking networks. However, the scale of the problem continues growing. Geopolitical implications extend beyond immediate enforcement concerns. The designation of cartels as foreign terrorist organizations creates new legal authorities, but also new complications. International law regarding sovereignty and intervention becomes relevant when dealing with non-state actors operating across borders. The economic dimensions of the challenge are staggering. Cartel revenues exceed the gross domestic product of many countries. Their ability to corrupt officials, purchase equipment, and maintain operations reflects financial resources that dwarf enforcement budgets. This economic imbalance creates fundamental strategic disadvantages for law enforcement. The technological sophistication continues evolving at an accelerating pace. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are being employed by both sides. Predictive analytics help optimize routes and timing. Counter-surveillance measures become more sophisticated as detection capabilities improve. The human cost of these operations extends far beyond immediate victims. Communities where laboratories operate face environmental contamination, violence, and social disruption. The corruption of institutions undermines governance and rule of law. The effects ripple through society in ways that are difficult to quantify. Understanding the full scope of these operations requires recognizing their evolution from traditional criminal enterprises into sophisticated business organizations. The implications for enforcement, policy, and international cooperation are profound. The challenge isn't just stopping individual shipments or arresting specific individuals. What's needed is a comprehensive approach that addresses the systematic advantages these organizations have developed. Technology, corruption, international coordination, and financial resources all contribute to their success. Effective responses must address each of these dimensions simultaneously. The Sonora laboratory represented more than just a major seizure. It revealed capabilities that few people understood existed. The 72 boilers weren't just equipment. They were evidence of an industrial capacity that rivals legitimate manufacturing. The implications of this discovery continue reverberating through law enforcement and policy communities. As investigations continue and new facilities are discovered, the pattern becomes clearer. These aren't isolated operations run by desperate criminals. They're components of a global enterprise that has transformed the nature of drug trafficking. The challenge they represent requires responses that match their sophistication and resources. The story of Mexico's most dangerous drug lab is ultimately about adaptation and evolution. Criminal organizations have embraced technology, professionalized their operations, and developed capabilities that challenge traditional enforcement approaches. Understanding this evolution is essential for developing effective responses. The future of this conflict will be determined by which side adapts faster and more effectively. Technology, resources, and international cooperation will all play crucial roles. The stakes continue rising as both the sophistication and consequences of these operations expand.